How's it going, everyone? Got another one here for you for Evo Hitting Academy groups here under Phase 4. We're getting into Week 2. Last week was about managing velocity. This week it's titled Managing Off-Speed. So I kind of use the terms managing and practicing back and forth and to give a little further understanding of what exactly that looks like, whether it be within practice or looking at it from a movement end through explanation or anything like that. We're going to do something a little the same here in the category of off-speed pitches, which is, another dynamic, another variable, another factor that goes in towards hitting. And the way how off-speed is interpreted, I guess I'm going to go as best as I can, and I'll take my time here just to comprehensively show you and explain how that can be looked at from a movement and mechanics aspect, but also in regards for a hitting approach. And from understanding that in the way in the way that I explain it as best as I can, they can kind of coexist. They can kind of co-balance. Movement can have an impact on timing, and timing can promote certain thoughts that can have an effect on movement. So when you're talking about managing either velocity within training or your practice, or having something that falls in the category of trying to hit off speed well, it's still timing. And still having that understanding of timing can help out. I'm going to go maybe a little more in depth here of what the author here manages for off speed, because it can kind of segue into a couple things that we can show for you. I'll start with the overview and purpose. And within the first sentence, that talks about how no two pitches are created equal. That constitutes for any type of category of pitch that's being thrown. So when you hear off speed or the type of pitches that a pitcher throws, you think of your conventional 2 to 3 to 4 different types of options or pitches that are out there. The no two pitches created equal can even be established under the fastball itself, where no fastball itself is created equal. And if they're put in two different locations, whether they be big or subtle, there's adjustments that are to be made on the hitter's end. In a skill where timing is everything, pitchers are always trying to disrupt hitters' timing at the plate. That can be with a multitude of pitches or just one pitch that's in different locations. There's no exact formula on how to hit off-speed pitches, which I feel connects more of like good hitters can handle different pitches. Good hitters are able to make adjustments, not necessarily the swings themselves. And it's important that you're exposed to them as much as possible and intuitively training themselves and how you deal with them in games. I'm going to do as best as I can to show a segue into how they can be a practice towards movement and approach. But yes, just like how managing velocity is the best way to handle it, get used to it. The same thing as off speed as well, if it is to be explained so easily. Moving on to the objectives here, learning how to deal with them, but also learning how to trust yourself into letting the ball get deep into the hitting zone is, I guess, maybe the first part that I could segue into. This is something that was mentioned not just by the author here, but also just a few colleagues. I think this was mentioned by Jeremy Booth. I saw it in a video, who runs the Future Stars series and is very involved in baseball. The one easy conversation when it comes to letting the ball travel deeper for fastball or velocity and off-speed pitches, a good conventional note of a byproduct to look at is hitters that are capable of driving the ball to the opposite field gap, the fastball to the opposite field gap, and then driving off-speed pitches to the pull side gap is just a good indicator of what we could be looking for managing velocity and off-speed. So, for example, if a right-handed batter can take that fastball in any given location and drive it to the right center gap, and then take a changeup or a curveball, something along the off-speed category, and drive that to the left field gap, that's where from those real minute differences, the real small, subtle differences in adjustability from handling velocity to off-speed, that's something that's felt in regards to the category of what makes a good hitter. And that can kind of tie it towards approach. And there's a couple of things that can be shown in regards for mechanics. Rolling over to tee work or just practice activity itself, from starting from the tee, imagining that you're facing a pitcher that is throwing you off speed to help you recognize the stretch. I'm going to show what my interpretation would be for the stretch and what that could possibly look like. I'm going to show that here with a couple of hitters. But then depending on the service that's available for your batting practice, whether it be someone that's flipping to you, throwing you overhand, or you have a machine, Starting off and mixing hard and soft within your rounds could be a big indicator that can kind of tie in towards a little bit of that approach that we were talking about, where pitches that are thrown hard, you're able to drive them to the opposite field, versus pitches that are soft, you're still driving them up the middle, but a little more towards the pull side, not really showing too big of a hole where you're casting your hands or you're getting too lost out on your front side where you're making it completely dead pull. And I'm going to show you a way that that can look like on how that can look. What I mean to say is, and then the same thing is transferred over to the batting practice round, but it's a little bit more difficult. But only more difficult if we're not transitioning towards handling what those small differences can look like. Why don't I start with a couple visuals here just to explain on this slide. One you've seen before, the other one is a little new. So I've shown this video before to the left of Hanley Ramirez way back in 2013. I think this can just further support what Hanley does for a swing, which is certainly probably something that is not taught in most lessons or in most things, much like this. And Trout's a really good example of what people consider to be very good mechanics and adjustability. And both work. Both were the same byproduct, a trip around the bags that are worth a run. One point that I'll make in both of these is the ability to get into the front side, and what was mentioned in the lesson before in regards for feeling and recognizing that stretch. That's something that I feel happens, and I think can be explained and segued over just towards the approach itself. I'll give you another view here on the side. So here is Contreras here hitting an off-speed pitch. If you take the video on the left, which is the full swing, you may notice right before the swing occurs, there is some weight that's getting out onto the front side. And then I kind of have the little GIF here to the right just to show exactly what the position of the hitter looks like when the front side is getting down. Nothing is getting too lost. Rotation is not getting too big. They're landing into their feet before a very big noticeable turn in rotation can occur. There's something that is noticeable in a few hitters where they start their swing before their front foot lands down to the ground. So, for example, at the very end of the GIF here to the right, where you see Contreras starting to turn, his shoulders and his arms are starting to create that leverage that turn into the swing. A lot of hitters will get into that position before the front foot lands down on the ground, which is a little bit of a flaw, which is something that doesn't show a lot of adjustability. Wilson Contreras is able to stay back, is able to stay within his legs. And so this is what I would describe, if it is something to watch and then to feel, this is what I would call the stretch, where you're not getting off into your swing too much. But look, there's a lot of context that kind of goes into this. And I'll move over to the next slide right here to just kind of break down what's happening once the swing is initiated and then what's occurring and what's happening. So there's a lot of context here that's being missed. There's a lot of things that are kind of being assumed. I think where you can apply an approach here can be kind of supported in a lot of different ways. But we don't know what Contreras was looking at. We don't know what he was looking for. We don't know the pitch count. We don't know who's pitching, which are all important factors to put into consideration. Maybe it could be easily agreed upon, though, that Jose Contreras is not trying to get beat. He's not trying to get laid, which could beg the question, which now is kind of starting to segue into the approach factor. And I ask this a lot with some hitters as well. How often are you trying to be perfect with your timing? And the majority answer that I get from hitters is that they're trying to be perfectly on time every single time. And I am usually bringing up this point because hitters that try to do that exactly all the time on every single swing, I'm bringing it up because they're late. And if you are late, then you're really susceptible to a lot of options, let alone trying to manage velocity or off speed. Because if you're late, that can force you to be early within your swing because you're just having a couple things that are not working in. You're not trying to avoid getting beat, so you're going towards something else that's a little counterproductive. I kind of like to explain it as if you can get caught early, you can get caught perfect on time, or you can get caught late. And you're never going to get time back. So if you're trying to be perfectly on time every single time and you're wrong, you're more likely to be late. But if you try to work off of being early and putting in that position where you're still hitting the ball out early. If you miss, if you're wrong, then the next option to pass within time would be perfectly on time. And that's what a lot of really good hitters do. They're able to be adjustable. They're able to hit a line drive, even if they're caught out front, which is something that we could be put into consideration. Some factors, some emphasis that you can give yourself if you're working on front flips or overhand BP, where you're mixing in hard and soft pitches, where if you're getting yourself caught out front, you're okay on that hard pitch then. And if it's soft, well, you're maybe even a step closer towards recognizing, okay, the front side can kind of get into the ground. You can compress that front leg into the ground and with the torso before resisting rotation, and you're giving yourself that thought, that feel of staying back. I think a big misconception of staying back is keeping that weight completely out onto the front side. Well, Contreras here in the example is able to be adjustable without losing anything on that backside, but there is something that's certainly being brought into that front side. And they're able to have that adjustability. They're still able to deliver their strike in the right time within the right moment. So speaking of the right moment, what I'm going to try to do here is play a little video that I know well enough that you're not going to be able to hear, but I think it'd be a little quicker to go and explain it. So what I have here in reference, I'll provide the link as well if you want to watch it. This is something that I saved a long time ago. I've showed this guy just a couple weeks ago. His name's Kyle Wags, or Wagner. He's Go Wags on Twitter. And this is just a video that I found that actually helps out for making those small little adjustments, whether it be within a different location, whether it be within a different pitch. There's adjustability, and it kind of contributes towards managing that off speed and really managing velocity as well. I think I have to play this video here first. You know what? I'll play the video with volume 2. Actually, so what Kyle is talking about here in this video here, just to kind of paraphrase, he brings apart the conventional points of contact that occur from pitches that are middle, inside, middle, and then outside. So like if I'm making an angle here, my hand here would be the inside pitch. So the batter would be here on this side. Inside, middle, and then away. So there's kind of like a diagonal line that starts closest to the front hip of the batter here, like Kyle here is a righty, and then as it goes away, it goes deeper towards the plate, which is something that he doesn't necessarily agree with because it's a lot of space to cover. There's a lot of things to get into, and especially when the pitcher starts throwing a lot harder, um, there's just a wider range, and within that wider range gives a whole bunch of adjustability factors that are a little difficult to manage. So through this approach, it's actually a little more consistent within swings, and the subtle changes that are made can happen when that front side is down to the ground, when you still keep a couple of things. You notice that he moved one ball right there. He's taking that one ball, and then he's going off of that one spot to then make a subtle adjustment for the next ball that's inside. He doesn't change a complete path towards that point of contact. He's going off that one pitch. He called it like the green light, the green flashing ball, where he's getting completely committed to that spot, and he is working off of that. On time or a little bit early, he doesn't give that type of context. But from that one spot, the adjustments that are then made from the next ball to the next ball to the next ball, it all feeds off of that one spot. What he goes on to further explain in another video is that when he puts that into practice, what he's mentioning there is just a little bit of an approach where there's one spot that he's going after, and if it's just a little off to the right, a little off to the left, it's still like a spawn of the swing that he's looking to take right down the middle. The direction is just a little bit worth of one ball, and then a little bit worth off another ball. So it's really kind of coming off of the same area of a swing that he's anticipating and that he's having intent. So this is actually something that I've done within practice before, and I think it's great. That's why I'm mentioning it within this video, because another couple things that he mentions is that you cannot take pitches. I think he sets a target of a trash can and an L screen that are basically in line with the shortstop and second baseman, and all the hitters have to hit the ball in between those. in between those two objects. So it kind of stays in towards a stay in the middle of the field approach, but you can't take any pitches. Doesn't take any pitches, and it's something that I actually notice with a lot of really good hitters too. When they're practicing, they don't actually really take pitches at all, because when there is a pitch that is a little off, whether it be the same pitch that you're throwing within batting practice, or if you're mixing in off-speed pitches, when you have that 2-0 count where there's a slider that's going away and you have to protect, rather than taking the pitch, you have to swing within this practice, because it's still spawning and tying off of that approach where it's down the middle, and you're making that small, minute adjustment to go and find a barrel. You're not allowed to foul off any pitches. You're not allowed to take any pitches, and you have to keep the ball in between those two targets, which gives that further emphasis. You can't do that because he's promoting to find barrels, promoting you to swing the bat, and using that approach of that ball right down the middle, where if there are any small, minute adjustments, like if there's a pitch down the middle, but then it shows up one baseball or two baseballs outside, rather than completely aborting and looking to cut and hit that ball out front, you're still trying to manage and maintain staying inside that ball, hitting it up the middle, and you're having a more aggressive mindset where if that pitch that is thrown in that spot right down the middle, that flashing green ball spot, you're going to absolutely hit it. It's a little bit more of an aggressive thing. And if there's a pitch that's a little bit too far off from that target, well, there may be some counts in some situations where you still need to swing. You're still keeping that aggressive mindset, and you're still putting yourself in good hitting positions where you don't pull off on your swing too quickly to pull that ball down the third baseline or to pull it in foul territory. You're still completing a full thorough swing and managing that off-speed pitch in a little bit of a hitting position that kind of shows and suggests from what Trout was doing, or from what Contreras was doing, or even maybe from what Hanley Ramirez was doing. Even though it wasn't pretty, still counts. It was still a barrel. And I feel like just kind of showing those examples and trying to comprehensively explain this within some reasonable time of this video for what Kyle Wags talks about, I felt just kind of segues into a lot of pieces that are being mentioned here just within this curriculum of where what the stretch can feel like and what it could also look like in those examples that are shown within those hitters in that video, and practicing where mixing in hard and soft pitches, how you can handle those, not just from the byproduct of driving them well the other way to the right field gap, and then those softer off-speed pitches are being pulled towards just the pull side gap, the one that's just next to right up the middle, but also tying in what you're looking for and what the intent is, whether it be from that one spot right there or from a spot that's a little further out in front. You're going to need to have some adjustability where you are cut out front, you're still in a good position, and you're still giving yourself that subtle little difference, something that's a little more obtainable to manage so that you can find a barrel. Because after all, if we can make it a little bit more simple, it's just easier to maintain. It's something that you're willing to pay attention to a little more in practice. So like what I said, I'll include this link in the video here if you want to go ahead and watch it, because quite frankly, I don't know if the video is showing up on your end or not. I know when I watch it, it doesn't, so I'm just going to provide the link anyway, just so that you can watch the full video anyway without me talking. I'm sure maybe that's a value added right there as well. So that's all that I have. I know this video took a little bit longer, so I'll end it right now. But if you have any questions, you know how to reach out to me. Have a good one.